The big debate over redistricting has taken quite another turn. You saw Texas having their issues, saying, hey, the state gets to control where our districts are, we get to redistrict ourselves. And now California Governor Gavin Newsom says, hey, us too, we're going to play that game. We're going to have some fun here. The difference is, Will, that is not what the California law states.
That's right. While in Texas, the legislature sets the districts, the congressional district map, and people may like that or not like that, but that's the current law in Texas. That's the same way in a lot of states. California actually has an independent, bipartisan, allegedly, bipartisan commission that draws their congressional district maps. That's something that the state voted on in 2010 and put into law. So this isn't a new thing. It's been 15 years that they've done it this way. Now, Gavin Newsom, as retaliation to Texas, is trying to force this unprecedented move, which needs to be approved. The language needs to be approved by the state legislature on Friday, so they can have a special election this November to change their law temporarily, just a one-off, to be able to redraw the maps outside of the bipartisan independent commission and be able to, for only purely political purposes, redraw their maps to give them extra congressional seats to have this political fight with Texas. So we'll get in more of the details, but it's pretty shocking
the two largest
that
states.
He's going after this, and this is the way he wants to do this at this point in time.
I just think he wants to get press. He's another guy who's just attention hungry, especially when he is eyeing a presidential run. We know this. It's very clear. It's very obvious. It's been obvious for years. This is a guy who has eyes set beyond the governor of California, and his eyes are set at the presidency. He doesn't care if it breaks any laws or if it changes anything or that he can go in and do it. It's about getting attention, getting press, getting news. And look, I got to give it to him. We're giving it to him right now. So maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. But you also don't want to get blindsided if you're one of our California supporters who don't know this is happening, and then all of a sudden what you voted into law just 15 years ago gets upended because you have a governor who has decided to take matters into his own hands because of his own endeavors, his own plans to seek the White House in just a few years. So let's not forget that. We have a large listener base. People kind of write off California. They write off some of these big states, New York, where the populace is huge. But truth be told, those are some of our biggest states of supporters, the ACLJ. Why? Because you see firsthand what it's like to live in some of these states. Also, there's a lot of conservative pockets when you have a giant state. But that can be easily changed if this redistricting happens. Look, like Will said, you may not like the idea of redistricting. You may go, I don't like what Republicans do. I don't like what the Democrats do. It seems like they both play politics with it. Of course they do. No politician is above the politics. It's part of the game. Don't like it, but it's just the truth. We've had to deal with that for the last decade.
Well, and what's different here is that they're criticizing Texas for following the way their law is set up, that their state legislature decides how the congressional maps are drawn. And as a news item as well, the Texas House last night actually was able to get to a quorum because dozens of those Democrats that fled the state came back to Austin. So it looks like they will be moving forward with their plan. But what Gavin Newsom is doing here isn't doing what Texas is doing. They're not using their normal process to try and change their congressional maps. He's trying to go outside of what their state law has on the books that the people of his state voted for. And according to a recent poll from Politico, 64% of the state wants the power to remain in the hands of that independent commission.
Mass majority.
But what he's doing now is he's taking what is supposed to be independent bipartisan in his state for 15 years that his state voted on, and taking it and making it purely political. We know that around 40% of Californians vote Republican. So when you look at that, but you realize how few representatives are from that state, he's taking an already politicized map and trying to make it more political by redrawing the lines to combat Texas. And what has to happen here is they have to approve legislative language by Friday. So they have to get it voted out so that they can then start notifying and plan for this special election by November 4th is his plan. They already have some municipal elections there. But in order for that to happen, it has to be redrawn by the end of the year because candidates for the midterm cycles start declaring candidacy and all those things early next year. So really, they're on a time crunch. This is kind of a dice roll. If he loses this ability and then the people of the state don't vote for this redistricting, there's some egg on his face sort of look, I took on Trump and the Republicans. But it just reeks of political gamesmanship when he is saying we are trying to protect democracy against someone who is elected to the presidency and to members of Congress and members of a state legislature by saying we're going to change our law real fast and try to do something that 64% of the state probably doesn't want, only to play games with our House of Representatives in the United States. It's disgusting, and they're about to spend about $250 million of Californian taxpayer money in order to get this special election done. Meanwhile, the state has a $55 billion deficit last year. Does anyone actually want to see this done? That's what I want to hear. I want to hear from people in California.
Let's go to Scott, who's calling in Nevada, not too far away from California, who's got a question. Listening on the radio. Scott, go ahead.
Hi, gentlemen. How are you today? I was just wondering what the options are for the Republican Party in California if they can file suit against this and drag it out as far as possible to prevent it from happening in a timely fashion or just prevent it completely.
I mean, well, it's going to go up to a special election. That's the plan, is for it to go. So, I mean, you'd hope that you don't have as many brainwashed people as you do in California who are just going to go along with what Gavin Newsom had to say. That being said, the derangement that is happening against President Trump and anything that's Republican or anything that's conservative right now, it would not shock me if they decide to give him this ultimate power.
Well, and when you look at also the makeup of their state legislature where this has to go to first, and they can't preemptively sue. There has to be some sort of damage before they can get the lawsuit out. So, but you look at the makeup of their the structure of the houses. You have the House, the State Assembly, which is like their state house, is 80 Democrats to 19 Republicans and 1 vacant, and then their state Senate is 30 Democrats to 10 Republicans. So very lopsided within the House and Senate in the state that they're going to be able to pass this on Friday if they want. And they can get the language buttoned up and in the right way that they want to present to voters in what they're calling Proposition 50, which will be voted on. But I'm not sure, and there's definitely not a preemptive lawsuit they could file to try to block it. But with them passing it and sending it to a ballot measure, there may be difficulty even suing to block it before it goes on the ballot.
I think the main thing is we got to bring attention. We got to bring attention to for California friends who may not know that this is how their law is set up. That he is circumventing their own law that was voted in just 15 years ago. Yes, that means it's been a little while, but not that long in terms of electoral cycles, where they said, no, we want to actually have an independent bipartisan council creating these districts. We don't want it to be politicized. It could be one of the first things California has done that I agree with. You don't want those politicized counties and the politicized districts, because it becomes, I mean, look at some of those ones in Illinois where you see them, go up like a river through the middle of the state just to pick up seats, It has nothing to do with actually supporting an area or representing an area. It's not how it works.
And when you look at this also, the cynicism that the Democrats have poured into our political system, which was already pretty rough as it was, but that, hey, what they're doing is trying to take our democracy, take away people's representation. So what are we going to do? We're going to do it, but do it worse. I mean, just the reality of that is so shocking that Gavin Newsom is willing to rush forward a constitutional amendment or a ballot proposition, Proposition 50, which he's saying represents all 50 states because this is a national issue. It's just shocking that they're willing to go that far over something, and they're even calling it the Election Rigging Response Act. Is the legislative package they're putting forward, wanting to say that it's President Trump that is in the Republicans in Texas that are rigging elections. So what are we going to do? We're going to force something through real quick so we can redraw our maps and make them even more unfair than they already are. And we're going to put that forward as if this is democracy. They're taking the bait in some way of showing it. But this also goes back to, Logan, I mean, there was this New York Times article, opinion piece that came out just a few days ago. And it shows what really the left is at the heart of, because the mouthpiece for the left, the New York Times, decided to put up this long interview and article accompanying opinion piece that says, abolish the Senate, in the Electoral College, pack the court, why the left can't win without a new constitution. It shows they're saying that President Trump is putting us into a constitutional crisis. No, everything they're doing is trying to get rid of that very constitution they're saying he's putting in crisis. They don't believe in it. We used to have a system where the two parties at least had different opinions on what the Constitution said, but still believed in it being our foundational document. The Democrat Party and the left is so far removed from that now, they don't even believe in our foundational document and want to get rid of it. And I think the New York Times being willing to put this out there and saying, oh, we're going to listen to all voices. No, they don't. They amplify the voices they want to be heard. And this is a scary amplification.